I'm here with James Timothy White, entrepreneur and author of 42 Businesses Under $100. So tell us about yourself, James.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be interviewed. Secondly, how I got started, it's pretty cool. And now that I look back, I find it it's pretty crazy how I was so young and people actually hired me to perform these certain services.
Yeah, I would think people, like, since you're so, even now you're very young, that people would be like, oh, he's just a kid.
Yeah. I look at a kid that's 12 years old, and I'm thinking I would never hire you.
Yeah.
And then I have to think for a minute, and I say, well, actually, wait, people hired me, so maybe I should give somebody the benefit of the doubt. But it's pretty simple. When I was younger, on my mom's 386 computer back in the day, I printed these Notepad. I don't know if you remember the program Notepad. It's like just a basic Word program. And I remember doing these flyers with a whole bunch of spelling mistakes because I was I think I was in grade 6 or 7 at the time. And so I went and printed these flyers, and I cut them, and they were all cut wrong. And I delivered them to these homes, and I ended up getting a babysitting job. And this lady would pay me $100 every Friday to babysit her kids for 5 or 6 hours.
Hey, when I babysat, I didn't make that much
I know,
money.
it's crazy, isn't it? So she gave me a bonus. So I started, and what I did when I used to babysit is buy the kids little trinkets and have treasure hunts. So they would always tell their mom, "I want James to babysit." So you kind of gotta put money back in the business, so to speak. Anyways, we had a big snowstorm in Calgary, Canada, where I'm from. And my dad, I wanted to make some more money, so I said maybe I'll start shoveling walkways. I'm sure you get a lot of kids like that here in New York. And so my dad drove me to local hardware store, and we purchased I think it was $22 or $23 snow shovel, and I went door knocking, and one thing led to another. And this lady, my first customer, Kathleen Del Rizzo, I still remember her name. She says, "My husband's on disability, and could you give me a flat rate contract for the government?" And I had no clue what I was doing. I said, "Okay, $100 a month." And she said, "Okay, I can, that's fair. I'll pay you $100 a month." To make a long story short, it didn't snow that winter. So for the next 6 months, I was collecting her $100 plus, in addition to doing her job. She also referred me to all her friends that were on disability. So now at 12 going on 13 years old, I went from one customer to 40 customers in the winter. So I was making $4,000 a month. And in Canada, we have certain tax laws where we don't have to pay income tax on that money. So it was pretty phenomenal. And with the money that I was making, because it was so much money, I was living at home. I didn't have any bills to pay. I was able to take that money and reinvest it in my business to grow it, which is a very important step for business success, is always reinvesting your time and energy and money to make that bigger, to meet that next person, that next contact. From that point, I moved into the summer care, lawn care, and snow removal and tree pruning, etc. And one thing led to another. Again, I got more contracts. And by the time I was 14, 15, going on 15, I bought my first pickup truck, which I couldn't drive at the time. So my uncle that was unemployed, came to work for me part-time. And he helped me kind of grow my business a little bit. And then again, the next year I got bigger and bigger. And then I got a big contract with S&C Lavalin Nextcore. They were a big engineering firm to build a NORAD program in Alberta, a government communication system called the Alberta SuperNet. And from that contract, it just kind of, propelled me to another level. We ended up, by the time I was 18, I had 300 full-time, contractors and staff members in 9 different offices.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty intense, going from, and the best part was I had no debt because I was so young, nobody would give me credit. So everything I had to do was cash, which would almost be a downfall later on in life, because when I was able to get credit, I went crazy with credit, right? Especially back in the credit bubble. So it was an interesting time. And then what happened, and to make this fairly quick, then what happened was I sold my business off to my parents in 2005, and I thought, well, I want to do something in the financial services business, and I didn't have so much money that I could, go become a big investment bank or whatnot. So I said I have to start small. So I started a payday lending company. And back in the day, again, I don't know what the laws are like now here in New York State or in Georgia, but back in the day, I made a deal with an Indian Reserve in Canada, because the Indian Reserve is kind of their own law. It's kind of considered an offshore entity compared to the United States. So
Right.
the U.S. laws don't apply to a Canadian Indian Reserve. So to make a long story short, I ended up being one of the first online payday lenders to lend to New York State and Georgia at 19 years old. So we'd ACH the money from Canada to a citizen in New York State, and we'd ACH it back through a service provider, and we'd make money on the payday lending business. And then I sold the business off in early 2008, just before the height of the credit crash. So I got very lucky
Yeah.
with that. Very lucky. I did lose a little bit of money during the crash, and with a couple bad experiences, I managed to come back, which kind of led me to where I'm at now, running an investment bank and also making people lots of money.
So speaking of making people lots of money, what's an example of how you would help someone make lots of money?
Well, the book
like
is,
me.
Yeah, the book is an example. So what I started doing is I started realizing that maybe I have, and I don't want to sound arrogant or brag, but maybe I have like a gift or something where I can really communicate with people and help them take their
Yeah.
business to the next level,
Yeah, I can
and just
see that.
give them some ideas. So what I did is I started publishing books and writing books and trying to get the word out there. Unfortunately, in the book publishing business, more than the acting and media business, it's a really tough, hard business to break into.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of money getting in. I got very frustrated and whatnot. So I ended up taking a couple years off, and I thought, well, I got to get back into it. So how do I make people money now? Is very simple. I created a book called 42 Businesses for $100. So people are willing to invest at least $100 or a little bit more into their business. They should be able to see some sort of return fairly quickly. And the returns and because the business is scalable, for instance, like a pet grooming business, where you can start off with just a leash and a collar, or maybe the homeowner already has that kind of hardware. All it is your time, and most people can afford to kind of arrange time to walk a dog for an hour, or maybe wash a dog or shampoo a dog, and it's probably a pretty fun job. And you can make a lot of money doing it. Up to, I would say, $50,000 to $100,000 a year in a full-time dog walking position.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
Oh.
yeah, you can do it, especially if you get the clientele that appreciate that kind of service, and especially if you build that relationship with the clientele, because business is about building relationships.
Yeah.
You can name your price. I mean, what's the difference between buying a $20 pair of sunglasses at Walmart or buying Dior sunglasses? I mean, it's just the brand name, right? So your job is to create that brand name.
That's really interesting.
Thanks very much. Hello, my name is James, and I'd like you to check out my book if you'd like to change your life and live a better future. You can go to www.jamestimothywhite.com or pick up my book, 42 Businesses for under $100, at most bookstores or most online retailers.